Number 8. Ramis Januzzi. 3 Australian Airbnb hosts were charged with the murder of a 36-year-old man who was staying at their home in the Melbourne suburb of East Brighton. In October of 2017, Ramis Januzzi rented a room at the Airbnb-listed residence belonging to Jason Colton, Ryan Smart, and Craig Levy. Januzzi ultimately decided to remain in the $30 a night room for a full week in spite of the fact that his bank account lacked the sufficient funds to pay for the extended stay. As Januzzi's checkout date drew nearer, the 3 homeowners became increasingly suspicious that he was going to leave without paying the agreed-upon fee. The 3 men reportedly confronted Januzzi in relation to their concerns on a number of occasions throughout the week before, on October the 25th, discovering that there was a mere $6 in the occupant's account. A physical altercation subsequently broke out between Januzzi and Colton, with the latter allegedly placing the former in a chokehold before carrying him outside the house with the help of Smart and Levy. Colton would later tell police he was solely attempting to subdue the victim, but Januzzi passed away on the front lawn as a direct result of the physical stress that had been placed on his body during the struggle. The forensic pathologist that conducted Januzzi's autopsy ultimately discovered that the man had modest levels of methamphetamine, codeine, and other substances in his system at the time of his death. All 3 of the homeowners were jailed in connection to the deadly incident. It was Colton's second stint behind bars, as he'd already served 3 months in prison for assaulting a housemate in 2013. Number 7. Christina Cooks and Juliana Panunzio. 2 young women were fatally shot during a house party at an Airbnb in Ontario on January the 19th of 2021. The victims were identified as 18-year-old Christina Cooks and Juliana Panunzio, aged 20. The Toronto area residents were attending a birthday gathering at a waterfront chalet in Fort Erie when the deadly shooting occurred. The Airbnb in question was regularly rented out by various out-of-town groups, many of whom were the subject of noise complaints from neighbors. It wasn't, however, loud music that prompted local residents to call 911 on the night of the incident, but rather the sound of gunfire. Police officers were dispatched to the building at about 4:15 a.m. Upon their arrival, they found the bodies of Crooks and Panunzio, both of which showed extensive signs of trauma, and the victims were pronounced dead at the scene. All of the partygoers fled after the shooting had taken place, and none of them remained at the residence when law enforcement arrived to investigate. Homicide detectives primarily relied on tips from the public in their efforts to identify persons of interest in the case. 22-year-old Christopher Lucas, a Scarborough rapper known also as El Plaga, was eventually charged with the 2 murders, while Heidi Baylor and Trevor Barnett, both aged 29, faced accessory to murder charges. The suspects' motives for the fatal shooting were not made public by the police during their initial investigation. Number 6. The Gainesville stabbing. A 52-year-old man was accused of stabbing one of his co-workers while they were sharing an Airbnb on a business trip to Gainesville, Florida, in November of 2021. Michael Denmark had rented the property along with 4 of his colleagues. Denmark became embroiled in a contentious argument, the specifics of which allegedly centered on food with the victim. The conflict took place in the kitchen of the rented unit and reportedly escalated to violence when Denmark brandished a knife and stabbed his co-worker 3 times in the leg and once in the chest. The victim, left in critical condition, was rushed to a nearby hospital where he underwent emergency surgery that fortunately saved his life. Denmark was taken into custody on 1 count of aggravated battery, but prosecutors subsequently upgraded their charges against him to attempted second-degree murder. Denmark was held on a $200,000 bond in the Alucia County Jail while he awaited his case's court proceedings. Number 5. La Chol. In July of 2018, a 19-year-old woman was murdered at the EQ Tower apartment she'd rented with her friends for the weekend through Airbnb, La Chol of Melbourne was fatally stabbed by a teenager who was left unidentified due to his status as a minor. Chol's violent demise was precipitated by a physical struggle between the two, which was captured by the rental property surveillance cameras. Although the murder was initially reported to have been spontaneous rather than premeditated, it was discovered by investigators that there had been pre-existing animosity between Chol and the teenager responsible for her death. The boy had reportedly gate-crashed the party, being thrown by Chol and her companions, and after the victim discovered her cell phone had gone missing, she told him to leave, which triggered the altercation that led to the stabbing. Although the teenager was initially given the maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, his defense team contended that the crime didn't meet the legal threshold for murder and sought to have his conviction dismissed accordingly. Number 4. Tyrone Noseworthy. A teenage rap artist from Canada was among the 3 individuals fatally shot at a downtown Toronto Airbnb. On January 31st of 2020, 19-year-old Tyrone Noseworthy, who also went by the name 4000 and was one half of the rap duo called Tallup Twins, was attending a social gathering at the rental apartment on the night of the incident. The gunfire reportedly originated inside the condo unit, but the casualties subsequently spilled out into the hallway. According to testimony given by neighbors, law enforcement officers were called to the building at about 10:30 p.m., by which point 2 of the victims had already succumbed to gunshot wounds. A 3rd man later passed away as he was tended to at the hospital, while a 4th was seriously injured but ultimately survived. Authorities identified those who died as Noseworthy, 20-year-old Joshua Gibson skier, and Jalen Coley, aged 21. Toronto police would later reveal that the preliminary evidence gathered by investigators suggested one of the deceased had killed the others before taking his own life, although they didn't specify who of them might have been responsible. Noseworthy had appeared in a number of music videos alongside another local rapper named Keyshawn Brown, better known by the stage name Wise. Brown had been shot dead inside his home in Surrey a little over a month prior to Noseworthy's demise. Number 3. Yuiko Takaoka. In February of 2020, San Jose police took 25-year-old Ryoichi Fusiya into custody as part of a murder investigation involving the man's deceased girlfriend. Fusiya and his partner, Yuiko Takaoka, aged 26, were staying at an Airbnb cottage in East Foothills in the days leading up to the deadly event. Fusiya had allegedly attacked his girlfriend with a knife and fatally stabbed her before absconding with the woman's car and all of his belongings on February the 18th. Authorities were called to the scene at around 4 p.m. after they'd received reports of a dead body inside the rental home. Takaoka's mutilated corpse was found beneath blood-soaked sheets, with a bloody kitchen knife positioned nearby. Fusiya turned himself into the police just a day after the crime had been committed. The deceased woman's vehicle was found at the home belonging to Fusiya's mother in San Lorenzo, where it had been taken by the man himself the previous day. Fusiya, who only spoke Japanese, waived his right to an interpreter during his arraignment on charges of murder with a weapon enhancement. The property was temporarily taken out of Airbnb's listings following the stabbing, while the homeowner declined to comment on the incident after being approached by reporters. Today's topic was requested by Mason Jones. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Carla Stefaniak. In November of 2018, while she was vacationing in Costa Rica, a Miami woman was stabbed to death at an Airbnb where she and her sister-in-law were staying. Carla Stefaniak had taken the holiday to Central America in order to celebrate her 36th birthday. Her partially decomposed body was found roughly 300 yards from the rental villa. She'd suffered multiple stab wounds to the neck and upper extremities and had also sustained an unspecified form of blunt force trauma to the head. Police in Costa Rica identified 32-year-old Bismarck Espinosa Martinez, aged 32, as the perpetrator of Stefaniak's murder. Martinez worked as a security guard at the Villa Buena Vista resort, where the victim was staying during her trip. Stefaniak had been communicating with family members in the days leading up to her death. Her last message indicated that she was going to ask a guard to get her some water, though it's unclear whether Stefaniak was referring to Martinez. The latter was sentenced to 16 years in a Costa Rican prison by a panel of 3 judges. Number 1. Lauren Casaira. A high school teacher from New York City was brutally murdered in an Airbnb villa on the Yucatan Peninsula in July of 2018. Lauren Casaira, aged 35, had taken a vacation to Mexico by herself, and the trip was immediately fraught with tension and unease. Following her arrival, Casaira texted a close friend and told them she was creeped out by the rental property's manager. According to Casaira's messages, which would later constitute important evidence in the murder investigation, the manager repeatedly flirted with the young woman and was later caught watching her from a window while she sunbathed by the pool. On one occasion, the man offered Casaira a drink, which the teacher declined before locking herself in her room for the night. The next morning, the housekeeper found the young woman lying unclothed and unconscious on the floor of her room. Rather than contact the authorities, however, the property manager proceeded to wash and dress Casaira with the housekeeper's help, while a local doctor was called in to examine her. The victim ultimately passed away from injuries she'd sustained during the apparent attack in her room, but investigators struggled to identify any suspects in the case. The manager was neither arrested nor charged in connection to the incident, and, according to employees at the villa, he moved to Switzerland after the property had become engulfed in controversy stemming from the murder. The Casaira family has publicly endorsed the notion that Mexican authorities had botched the investigation, and they've also levied criticism against Airbnb for their tepid efforts to provide aid to the victims' grieving loved ones. Thanks for watching. Would you rather host a revolving door of perfect strangers in your spare room, or spend each night in a different stranger's house yourself? Let us know in the comments section below.